Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about... Wait, one second. There, my anonymity is now assured in the impending face of YouTube fame. Superman. The Man of Steel, the last son of Krypton. First appearing on the comic book page 83 years ago, Superman has gone on to become not only one of the most iconic superheroes ever created, establishing the archetype for all subsequent superheroes, but one of the most recognizable products of American pop culture in the world. Created by writer Jerry Siegel and artist Joe Shuster, the character went through a lot of development before becoming the all-American red cape-wearing hero we know today. His initial iteration in the 1933 short story The Reign of Superman bore a stronger similarity to eventual arch-nemesis Lex Luthor as a bald-headed man who uses his powers for nefarious purposes. As Shuster and Siegel continued to pitch the character to various publications, Superman would evolve from a scientist adventurer to a child from the future who goes back in time before the Earth explodes, to an extraterrestrial being from the planet Krypton who is sent to Earth in order to use his powers for the good of humanity. After what is considered to be his first official appearance in Action Comics 1 on April 18, 1938, the character became a huge success as well as a big influence for other iconic heroes conceived in that era such as Captain America and Batman. Inspired by characters such as John Carter, Zorro, and the Scarlet Pimpernel, and founded in the American monomyth of the lone hero, Superman's appeal as a savior who defended the weak and innocent proved especially potent in the 1930s and early 1940s as fascism spread in Europe and America entered World War II. Morally incorruptible and with the powers of a god, Superman served as a figure young readers could project themselves into, and his commitment to truth, justice, and the American way would become his most defining attribute, as the character went on to be adapted into multiple media formats such as radio, television, film, and video games. So, if Superman has proved to be arguably the most endurable and iconic superhero ever created, why do so many reactions to him tend to be that he's boring?
Oh, okay. I get it. You're having an image problem.
Don't be ridiculous. I'm Superman.
Yeah, exactly. You're white bread. You're boring.
Okay, jokes aside, I know that Batman is cooler than Superman is one of the lazier comparisons that can be made, and believe me, I was on that train myself in the late aughts. But I would like to believe that we have grown to a point where we can have more nuanced conversations regarding which superheroes have the best written characters and why. And I personally think one of the reasons that Superman is often regarded as less interesting than other superheroes is not necessarily because he seems perfect, but because of the belief that the character has always existed in this state of perfection that other superheroes just haven't. He wasn't a fish out of water trying to adjust to humanity like Wonder Woman. He wasn't spurred to fight crime due to some deeply rooted psychological trauma like Batman. If anything, the character's origin presents him as a chosen one figure whose destiny to be the savior of humanity pretty much put him beyond the pale of mortal fallibility. Now, that's certainly not to say nuanced and complex versions of the character haven't been written. Like all superheroes that were originally depicted as broadly aspirational crime fighters, Superman has had various iterations and expansions that have provided much-needed depth to the character. I do, however, think it is interesting that our collective understanding of Superman still seems to be predominantly rooted in his original characterization from the 1930s and 1940s. While our understanding of superheroes has changed and evolved alongside them, we seem to have forgotten that Superman has also changed and evolved, and that there exist just as myriad depictions of the character that range in tone and complexity as other superheroes, say like Batman. That being said, it wouldn't be unfair to say that when it comes to bringing him to the screen, writers and filmmakers do have an especially difficult task on how to effectively portray a character that does seem so superficially perfect. Recent cinematic iterations of Superman have really wanted to steer away from that label of wholesome boringness, and sometimes that hasn't always been done to such great effect. Which brings us to the topic of today's video. So we're in a post-Dark Knight world, and while yeah, I do think the pendulum is swinging a bit in regards to superheroes being fun and silly again, it seems like we have lost our way a bit when it comes to our latest on-screen depictions of Superman. We just quite haven't found a way to bridge the gap between your more sincere and campy Superman and your more serious and gritty Superman that we've seen in later films. If only there was a way we could get back to basics. to see and understand the character as he was originally intended, with the added complexity he's acquired over the years. Something that honors yet expands upon the Superman legacy in daring and bold ways.
Chances are I ride the bench half the season. Then I can be careful.
Smallville! I love Smallville. For a show that was released 20 years ago on the WB network as a teen melodrama modeled on the likes of Seventh Heaven, I don't think I have ever seen an on-screen depiction of Superman that so successfully explores the interiority of the character while staying true to the qualities that made him so beloved in the first place. And here's why. It's because the show isn't about Superman. It's about Clark Kent. Superman is a symbol, an icon. He's supposed to be. But Clark Kent isn't. Series creators Alfred Goh and Miles Millar understood this, which is why when they were developing the pilot for Warner Brothers, they were adamant about focusing on the character of Clark Kent, not Superman. Hence why they established the now famous moniker, "No Flights, No Tights." While neither Goh or Millar had much familiarity with the character or comics in general, they were excited by the prospect of doing a Superman series that specifically examined the high school years of Clark Kent. According to Millar, they were interested in stripping him down to his bare essence, in a way. We wanted to lose the suit and see his humanity. We wanted to get inside his head and see the reasons he became Superman. There had been popular television series before with a young Superman, such as The Adventures of Superman and Superboy, but these series were both made in different times when audience expectations were very different as well. They didn't want to see Clark brooding about his identity, they wanted to see Superman punch things and save people. This is why these series always made a point of showing Superman as quickly as possible within the pilot episode after hitting the basic beats of his backstory. Hell, in The Adventures of Superman we get one scene where Martha Kent tells him how she and Jonathan found him, and it's not even told by her. The narrator steps in and then boom, grown-up Clark is off to Metropolis. In Superboy, Clark, Lana, and Lex are all significantly younger, but it essentially feels like Superman just set in college. Within the first 5 minutes of the pilot, we see Clark already has the Superman and secret identity thing down pretty pat. Also, quick aside, I just love this version's Lex Luthor. It is both the most terrible and greatest thing I have ever seen.
Let's get out of here. Why hurry, Leo? Think of the fun we're all having.
Nobody talks to the president of the senior class that way. Nobody! Drive, Leo.
Smallville is unique because by having the focus be on Clark before he becomes Superman, the series can get around the issue of Superman as perfect and boring Boy Scout by focusing on Clark and his development, and how Superman is the hard-won result of that development. In the first season, Clark doesn't know anything about who he is, where he comes from, or who he is becoming. He's just a teenager who wants to try out for football and go to homecoming, while dealing with these emerging powers, like waking up one morning to discover he can float. It was a gamble, but it's this combination of the quotidian and the extraordinary, of the human and the superhuman, that made the show and character resonate the way it did. Fans saw the sincerity with which Goh and Millar were treating the Superman mythos by focusing on Clark's upbringing and how that narrative's potential hadn't really been fully tapped before. A narrative that begins one fateful day in a small Kansas town called Smallville. The pilot episode of Smallville begins this adaptation of Superman with a unique spin by including a meteor shower of Kryptonian rubble that brings Clark to Earth.
What's happening, Jonathan?
According to Goh and Millar, the meteor shower was a narrative device they included to be the show's main hook. The meteor rocks left by the shower would cause mutations to different characters every episode, and Clark would have to fight them, thereby giving a not-yet-Superman a chance to do Superman-y things. The shower would also fundamentally affect and link the three primary characters of Clark, Lex, and Lana in different ways. The rest of the first 10 minutes follow the original plot points of a now significantly younger married couple, Jonathan and Martha Kent, finding a young Clark, or Kal-El, with the major inclusion of having this meteor shower and by extension Clark's arrival cause chaos and destruction to this town. Cut to the present day of 2002, where this very small town is now the meteor capital of the world. On the Kent farm, Clark is getting ready for his first day of high school. Like many teen shows, Smallville appears to take place in an alternate reality where you begin high school in your early 20s, but in Clark's case we'll just chalk it up to a super Kryptonian growth spurt, or Maybe that's just how 15-year-olds look on Krypton. Before leaving, Clark asks Jonathan if he can sign his permission form, allowing him to try out for football. Here, we have one of the primary conflicts between Jonathan and Clark established in the series. Clark wants to do A, and Jonathan says no because of B. Clark has grown up with the belief that his powers are dangerous and must be hidden at all costs because Jonathan and Martha are understandably worried that the government will take Clark away and exploit or hurt him. Clark still isn't aware at this point of who he is, and in his words, he'd give anything just to be normal. The pilot makes it clear that we are a long way from Superman, and that the show is going to take its time focusing on who Clark is right now, and how the factors of his environment and upbringing are what influence him to become Superman. At Smallville High, Clark meets up with his best friends Pete and Chloe. Pete is an original character from the comic played by Sam Jones III. Chloe, a series original and proto-Lois Lane, is a quippy, aspiring journalist. She is played by... Boy, is that high school reunion gonna be awkward. We also meet Lana Lang, the beautiful girl next door and Clark's first love. Their connection will inspire an intense and burning will they won't they relationship that I promise won't become one of the most grating and drawn out plot threads ever put to television.
If you don't like him, just say it. Don't pretend to be his friend.
We're gonna put a pin in this one. The rest of the pilot more or less sets up the structure for the entire season, balancing both complications and revelations in Clark's personal life alongside battling a different weekly antagonist infected by the Meteor Rocks. There's parties, angst, romance, lifehouse. The gang's all here for your early 2000s teen melodrama. But what is it about the first season that sets it apart from other depictions of Superman? Well, first, let's look at the Man of Steel, or in this case, the Boy of Steel himself, Clark Kent. Clark Kent, as played by then 24-year-old newcomer Tom Welling, is your typical all-American teenage boy who just wants to live a regular life, albeit with the relatable social perks of popularity and a relationship. While Smallville is not the first on-screen depiction of a young Clark Kent, it is notable in that it is the first one to depict Clark Kent years before he becomes Superman. In Season 1, Clark really doesn't want anything to do with these powers. He has grown up being told that his powers must be hidden, but when the time is right, he can use them to do great things. Being, 15 years old and a good 10 years away from even having a fully developed brain, it's pretty understandable that Clark really doesn't want to be concerned with any long-term plans for his powers or his destiny.
I didn't dive in after Lex's car. It hit me at 60 miles an hour. Does that sound normal to you? I'd give anything to be normal.
When discussing the series and character, Welling stated, "I always saw there was more to it than Superman. Smallville isn't about Clark Kent being a superhero, it's about Clark Kent trying to be a normal teenager." When I read the pilot script, it was even more interesting than I thought it was going to be. I had thought it was just going to be, as it's still wrongly described by some people now, Superman in high school, but it definitely has a different spin. It was uncharted territory that focused more on Clark, and how these abilities helped other people, but didn't necessarily help him. Welling really brings a lot of sweetness and pathos to a role that could have so easily come across as flat or boring on paper. Not to say that there aren't occasional moments of this, but in addition to inhabiting the physicality of Clark Kent, Welling does effectively straddle that line between perfect and flawed, albeit innately kind and sincere, human-raised teenage alien. He's just such a gentle, giant cinnamon roll. Duh, look at that smile. Okay, focus. But what's a good-hearted hero without a polar opposite villain to be the yin to their yang? Batman has the Joker, Spider-Man has Doc Ock, Superman... Let's talk about Lex Luthor. What can I say about Michael Rosenbaum that hasn't already been said? His portrayal of Lex Luthor makes this series. Rich kid with daddy issues, lovable jerk, a dark anti-hero trying to find his way towards the light. If there was a reason to watch the show, this character is it. Initially exiled to Smallville by his father, Lionel Luthor, Lex meets Clark after recklessly causing an accident while driving and nearly dying. Unable to figure out how Clark survived and was able to save him, Lex's fascination with Clark would develop into a friendship that honestly became my favorite thing about this series. The complete antithesis of Clark, rich, urbane, and sexually experienced, Rosenbaum plays Lex not so much as your eccentric billionaire obsessed with real estate, or Joker Mark Zuckerberg, but as a cool-headed Machiavellian businessman who more than anything doesn't want to become like his villainous and abusive father, Lionel Luthor. The inclusion of a friendship between a young Clark Kent and Lex Luthor is something that actually isn't original to the series. It was based off of a Silver Age comic story that showed Lex as a young scientist who hero-worshipped Superboy, sort of a syndrome from The Incredibles situation, before an unfortunate accident that results in the loss of his hair and life's work causes Lex to blame Superman and turn against him. In Smallville, they age Lex up to his early 20s and flip the dynamics to where Clark looks up to him as an older and more worldly figure. The friendship is definitely modeled on a brotherly dynamic, with Lex saying,
"You're like the younger brother I never had."
Their friendship also highlights the complementary nature of their differences while effectively conveying the impending tragedy of its eventual dissolution. In the Smallville Chronicles critical essays on the television series, editor Lincoln Gearty discusses the divergent paths of Lex and Clark as a necessity of the moral dualism that must be present between hero and villain, and that in regards to Lex, Smallville is as much about the descent of him as a character as it is about Clark ascending to become Superman. In the first season, Lex is far from the supervillain he will eventually become and is instead a young man trying not to be defined by his past.
There are parts of my life I'm not proud of, Clark.
I heard you were quite the bad boy before you joined us here in Smallville.
It's nothing I'm proud of. I was a different person there. You think my dark past is gonna rub off on you?
But for someone who is trying to escape his past, he's also simultaneously obsessed with it. Be it his troubled partying days in Metropolis, his father's abuse, or his family's legacy, Lex's fear of the past and what it means is what contributes to an insatiable curiosity to understand it. Fear is one of the defining characteristics of this iteration of Lex Luthor because it both fuels his insatiable curiosity and drive, while also contributing to what I believe is his fatal flaw, a need to control. This includes others, his self-image, even his own destiny. This aspect of the character has contributed to the ruthless and obsessive side of his personality. Rosenbaum is incredible at hiding this character weakness under this self-possessed veneer, all the while showing Lex's desire for love and connection that his controlling nature is meant to belie. According to Rosenbaum, the character is ultimately looking for unconditional love. Rosenbaum states, "That's all he wants. I think we all do. And what's so sad about Lex is he can't find it in any of the women that he tries to invest himself in. He can't find it in his father. The only person who might have loved him is his mother who died so young. Everybody he touches ends up either crossing him or trying to kill him." This desire for connection stems from his toxic relationship with his father, Lionel Luthor, who, like other great authoritative TV dads, is both perpetually critical and antagonistic towards his son, while also occasionally expressing begrudging respect or even fear at his growing capability. Donald Glover is clearly having the time of his life playing this smarmy, swaggering businessman, and his scenes with Rosenbaum are always a treat to watch. Their quotes about one another are honestly so great. So I've talked about the way the series' depiction of Clark's and Lex differ from other iterations of the characters, but what about the themes? Are the themes of the first season of Smallville true to the Superman mythos? If the goal of Smallville was to examine how Clark Kent became Superman, then a big focus of the first season was establishing how a critical factor in that development would come from the influence of his adoptive parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent. Played respectively by John Schneider and Annette O'Toole, Smallville is kind of an outlier when it comes to other teen series where parents, if they are even shown at all, are typically killjoys, negligent, clueless, or at worst, abusive. In Smallville, the Kents play a much more active and supportive role in Clark's life. This is not only because of the extra attention having an extraterrestrial son with superpowers would need, but because they are determined to impart good values and morals so that Clark can not only learn to use his powers ethically, but can also simply become a good person. According to Karen Beeler, as a teenager, Clark is regularly presented as the savior who needs help. In the first few seasons, Clark's parents physically and psychologically save their son often. They not only move him away from the paralyzing power of kryptonite, but also provide parental advice. With characters like Homelander from The Boys and Brandon Breyer from Brightburn often being labeled as realistic Superman or if Superman existed in our world, it's honestly really refreshing to see a Superman narrative that attempts to ground the character in reality and still argue that, yes, with his parents' support, this superpowered being can become someone who is selfless and wants to help others. Your mileage may vary on how realistic you think that is, but I mean, this is about a flying boy from space. Are we really looking for that? But if the show is going to make an argument for anything, it's that your upbringing does matter, and that the connections you have with those who love and support you are significant. In the episode Leech, when Clark temporarily loses his powers, he worries he won't be the same person anymore.
You're our son, whether you can bench press the tractor or not.
What do I do now?
Well, life isn't easy for anybody. Whether you're normal or super, but you're still Clark Kent. And you were raised a certain way, and that's never going to change. Sure, your abilities were part of you, but they didn't define you.
Clark is a hero not because he has superpowers, but because he is someone who is always trying to do the right thing, even though it's hard. If Jonathan and Martha Kent have given him the foundation to build a strong sense of character, then this is especially highlighted by another important aspect of the season, the Meteor Freaks and the function that they serve. The weekly antagonists, or as they are called on the show, Meteor Freaks, that Clark must defeat usually serve to contrast with or highlight a struggle Clark is facing. These characters tend to be fellow high school students that, when endowed with powers from the radioactive kryptonite rocks, abuse it for selfish reasons. If Clark's upbringing is what defines how he uses his powers, then the Meteor Freaks serve to contrast that by showing how these characters and their feelings of anger or loneliness are influenced by the abuse and neglect of their parents or guardians. This theme is most apparent in the episode Leech, when classmate Eric Summers obtains Clark's powers after they are transferred to him through an electrical storm. Eric's home life serves as a direct contrast to Clark's, such as when his authoritative father insists he get tested when he exposes his powers. Invisible and powerless his whole life, Eric responds with a line that, had circumstances been different, could have just as easily been said by Clark.
What are you gonna do, Dad? Ground me, huh? I never have to listen to you ever again. I can do whatever I want, and have whoever I want, and no one can stop me.
When the episode culminates with Clark defeating Eric and the Electrics returning Clark's powers, Jonathan points out that it wasn't the powers themselves that made Eric evil.
Hey, they had problems long before he had your abilities.
Another theme of the season is Clark's feelings of loneliness and alienation. While this is primarily influenced by the necessity of keeping his powers a secret, it's also what informs his connections with Lex and Lana, two characters who also feel alone and isolated. While Clark struggles throughout the first season to pursue a romantic relationship with Lana, it's Lex's pursuit of a friendship with Clark that best highlights the characters and their feelings of loneliness. Lex's interest in Clark is initially piqued because of the accident and his seemingly miraculous survival, but it becomes clear as the season goes on that Lex truly is interested in pursuing a friendship with Clark. As the season goes on, it does become clear that Lex is truly interested in pursuing a friendship with Clark, and that he admires Clark's qualities of innocence, selflessness, and goodness. For some viewers, it might seem weird that this 22-year-old is trying so hard to pursue a friendship with a high schooler he has nothing in common with, but the emphasis the series' texts give to Lex's trauma and isolation, if anything, for me personally, serves to highlight the sadness of the character and why he would go to these lengths to pursue this friendship. Having grown up in a manipulative and toxic family where emotions are seen as weak, Lex approaches anyone with suspicion. He has trouble being vulnerable and typically assumes an air of confidence and capability, but when under the influence of the meteors in episode 11's Hug, his greatest insecurities are brought to light.
You think I don't see the way your parents look at me? The way half the town looks at me? Friendship's a fairy tale, Clark. Respect and fear are the best you can hope for.
While many people do regard Lex with distrust due to his father's reputation, Clark's trusting nature and ability to see what others can't makes him much more receptive to Lex's attempt at building a friendship. Clark admires Lex's qualities of intelligence, confidence, and sees him as a more worldly mentor. He also believes in Lex's potential to be who he wants.
If anyone can choose who they want to be, Lex, it's you.
Another aspect I love about their relationship is how they mirror each other in regard to their relationship with their own personal histories. While Lex is continually looking to his past in order to understand it, Clark is continually wondering about his future. Unlike Lex, Clark doesn't have the roadmap of a backstory to follow, and a critical question for Clark in this season, as stated by Go and Millar, is, where do I come from? Clark's ignorance about his past and adoptive parents in conjunction with his emerging powers makes him fearful about the future and who he is becoming. This is what humanizes the character without removing his inspirational qualities. We can all relate to wanting to use superpowers for adulation, personal gain, or even revenge. But when Clark continues to perform simple, decent acts such as anonymously returning Lana's necklace in episode 2, or preventing her breakup with her boyfriend Whitney by convincing him to tell her why he's been distant, he continuously shows how deciding to do what's right is the most heroic thing any individual can do. And in the year of our Lord 2021, I think we can all learn a little from Smallville's Clark Kent. Boy, I can't wait for season 2.
I wanted to clear the air and preserve our friendship. But now I don't even know why I bothered.